to be the opening team for two conferences in one go. So thanks for the privilege, Ramesh and Sunil. I think this thing came together quite nicely because of the way the dates came together and the two conferences came together. So I hope that the interaction improves and interaction is useful for all of us, because I think today's tumor care is all about multidisciplinary interactions and multidisciplinary inputs. So with that theme in mind, I think we'll get going. Today's tumor board, as was already mentioned by Gaurav, Dr. Rekha Kumar, who is a pathologist from Kidwai Memorial Hospital, Bangalore, Dr. Prema Menon, who is a fellow pediatric surgeon from PGI Chandigarh, Dr. Tushar Vora, who is a hemato-oncologist from Tata Memorial, Mumbai, and Dr. Siddharth Laskar, who is a radiation oncologist from Tata Memorial, Mumbai. So I think, so let's get going. The way we have structured this is basically we will discuss one typical case in greater detail and take it as we see the patient, rather than look at it all from hindsight and say that this could be done, that could be done. So that was the basic theme that we thought we will go through, and we try to simulate a real life situation as much as possible. Depending upon the time that is left, we might take up a few cases separately, which are sort of standard but infrequent. And at any point of time, if there are questions, we will stop so that we can take those questions. And I hope that it is interaction rather than one-sided didactic kind of talk. So let me introduce you to this child. When we saw her first in the middle of last year, she was nearly 3. She was a 2-year, 9-month-old girl, and she presented with a fairly typical history of sort of low-grade fever, persistent weight loss. And when she went to her pediatrician, the pediatrician found a mass in the right side of the abdomen. Basic investigations were done, imaging was done, and the child was found to have this. As you can see, it's a very large tumor that is arising from the middle of the right kidney. Kidney itself is stretched over completely over the tumor. The tumor seems to cross the midline. There were no other lesions elsewhere. The other kidney was normal, the chest was normal. So this was a sort of initial picture that we started with. The girl was otherwise pretty well preserved and had no other comorbidities. So with this kind of background, I think we will go to the sort of discussion, and I think I will start with the medical oncologist, Dr. Tushar. With this kind of a picture, clinical picture, is it a typical picture, and how would you go about it? What's the most likely diagnosis considering the age of the child and the presentation? Can we have that mic working, please?
Yeah, I think it's working, right? Yeah. So, I mean, the age and the presentation is quite typical, though Wilms tumor mostly presents as a asymptomatic mass, incidentally detected flank mass, and the presence of fever and weight loss actually puts me off a little slightly from the diagnosis. But otherwise, it's a renal mass, and considering the age, the most common being Wilms tumor, but I would keep other possibilities in mind.
Dr. Prema, would you agree, or do you?
No, as I said, peak incidence of Wilms tumor is between 2 to 5 years. I mean, it's most common, and this is the most common diagnosis at this age. And we also know that about 20 to 30% of Wilms tumor will have some symptoms like fever, hematuria, and so on. So it's not always asymptomatic. So that way, although she is well preserved, if we ask history carefully, we always find that there are some other additional findings. So all put together, yes, it's a most common tumor at this stage, and it will be a tumor.
I think the next question comes about the role of biopsy, and I mean, this is a pretty large tumor, but the issue about biopsying this tumor. One, would you think to continue further management, biopsy would be necessary? I think. Please go ahead, Dr. Prema. What do you think? I think we will. I think all four of us, all four, which I think should.
Okay,
is something that's controversial.
Yeah. So it actually depends whether you're following NWTS or PSYOP protocol. In PGI, I think from 2006, 2007 onwards, they are following the PSYOP. Again, in PSYOP, you have with and without biopsy. So our center, we are doing a fine needle aspiration biopsy. So I suppose with that kind of background, I would say yes, that biopsy is required. Although you're sure it's Wilms, but maybe you will know a little more about this tumor with that.
Yeah, Dr. Vora?
I would definitely recommend a biopsy. And to take your fourth question first, does biopsy upstage a tumor? Not if followed by chemotherapy, so there's no harm in doing a biopsy. Also, trials have shown that non-Wilms pathology, if identified early, it's a significant proportion of patients when biopsy is not done. So definitely a biopsy. Especially again, I would say with atypical symptoms, though as Madam said that they may be present in 20 to 25%, and a large tumor, a biopsy is recommended.
Dr. Laskar, what would you think?
Yeah, it's the same. Do a biopsy.
Dr. Rekha Kumar?
Yes, I think FNA is fine.
Okay. So I think we all agree that irrespective of where we are, 3-4 different big institutions around the country are biopsying. Does anybody have any other opinion or question?
So
Dr.
my,
Shalini? Not, I mean, this does not look like.
On the radiology or the clinical presentation, like child is very sick and we think there's a confusion between neuroblastoma and Wilms or sports, then we do a biopsy. But otherwise we don't do. And especially because age is less than 5. Discuss the radiology, we see it ourselves and along with the radiologist. If there's any doubt, then we do the biopsy. And if we do it, we do a two-cut retroperitoneal route.
Okay. I think this is an important thing, so let's just spend a few minutes on it, yeah, and take opinions. Yes, please.
Yeah, as she told in RCC, we were practicing this NWTS protocol, which obviously they don't recommend biopsy before this thing. And of course, if they say it is left to the consultants, this thing. We were doing it for a long time. And if the surgeon is happy to go ahead with the surgery, we definitely go with the surgery first. But of course, as she told, if there is any problem, if the patient is having some symptoms, for example, even if it is a simple respiratory infection, whether this anesthesia is getting postponed and things like that, then only we will do a pre-op chemotherapy or biopsy and all. But nowadays, one tendency is that when we say to the patient regarding the pre-op chemotherapy and all, they would like to get, how do you know from CT scan alone, how can you say that it is a malignancy and how can, of course it is from Kerala, our people are very this thing. So in that case also, we will go ahead with this thing. Regarding the upstaging biopsy, UK CCST has shown that they have done some studies and what they have shown is that pre-op needle biopsy, there is no need for upstaging in UK CCST. But NWTS, yes.
So that brings a question, if I may. If you don't do a biopsy upfront, those are the cases where you go for upfront surgery.
Yeah,
So anyways, you have the histopathology.
No, the
But when
question
you are
is-
not going for upfront surgery, would you give chemotherapy without a histopathological confirmation?
Yeah, so let's just take so how many units would give chemotherapy without a biopsy, either excision or needle or whatever form?
So
Okay.
you can ask the other question also.
Okay, Dr. Mukta, go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. Just
Yeah.
introduce yourselves, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Ramya. I'm an oncologist pediatric oncologist from UK, Southampton. So I can say yes, we do follow the SIOP protocol. But what's coming up in the UK is that more and more we are beginning to see when you have this typical presentation, we are turning away from biopsying. However, when you have atypical presentations, for example, the age group, or if the imaging characteristics are not very typical, then yes, we are biopsying it. So in fact, in our recent CCLG Wilms tumor group, we are saying if you have the typical features, we can go ahead and start chemotherapy because in the context of Wilms, we are only going to be giving 4 weeks of preoperative chemotherapy. And then the whole tumor is coming out, and then we go ahead to see if the diagnosis is different. So the initial 1 year when we followed this, we found that I would say it's going to be less than 2% of the patients we got it wrong.
Okay, Dr. Mukta, you wanted to.
What about this needle biopsy upstaging? Because there are a lot of years, there are some people say yes.
Would you like to comment?
What
The
is
types
it?
of biopsies and he was asking
Yeah.
FN versus needle versus
Yeah.
two-cut versus.
We do, yeah. Yeah, we do guided FNA, And that is good if you have pathologists who are experienced in cytopathology. So I think that becomes a thing. With the needle core biopsy, there's a lot of tissue. So one is, it's easier to make a diagnosis of Wilms tumor. And with fine needle aspiration, what we do routinely is also make a cell block. So with that cell block, you can also do IHC. And again, you start seeing patterns, which you may not see in a smear, in a fine needle aspiration smeared cytology material. So we routinely do guided fine needle aspiration for Wilms tumor, and that works very well. As Dr. Appaji has to say anything on that?
Go to chemotherapy and do surgery. What you practice
Okay.
in our institute.
Yeah, all right.
Say something which is contrary to what Dr. Prema just said. I'm sorry, Dr. Rekha said. In TMH, we always practice true cut biopsy. We do not go for cytology. That's because cytology, again, it's an invasive procedure. We are ending up doing a cell blocks anyway. So by doing a test by cytology, we are not really achieving too much. And while doing a core biopsy, you are getting a tissue. It's useful for IHC, today for diagnosis and even tomorrow for any molecular tests. So it's not just my personal, I am heavily biased towards true cut biopsies anyway, but I think it has a huge advantage. If at all you want to do a tissue diagnosis earlier, I would encourage a true cut biopsy rather than FNAC.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting.
this is with due respect to the excellent cytopathologists around, I know.
Okay. I think we will go on here. I think we can continue discussing biopsies till.
Just one word about upstaging.
Yeah.
This biopsy upstage the tumor. So if we do a transperitoneal true cut biopsy, that does upstage the tumor. We'll have to give radiation. We must remember that always we have to do it retroperitoneal. Even today, we get patients biopsy done outside by radiologists. Probably pediatric surgeon has not seen or whatever, and they've done a transperitoneal biopsy because it was a huge mass. So then we have to give radiation.
Yeah, I think this is an important point, and I think we will come back to this as we go through with the presentation. So this child had a true cut biopsy, and the true cut biopsy, this is what it said. I think I'll put the slides up, and I'll ask Dr. Rekha to just take us through this briefly.
Yeah.
Is there a pointer? Do you have a pointer?
Or you can use the mouse itself.
But you'll have to.
I'll have to go there. No, I can see the picture to the left. Okay, there are two pictures here. The picture to the left shows.
This one. Center button.
Yeah.
That shoots through that.
Yeah, this picture shows very clear-cut epithelial differentiation. You see these tubular structures, and you also see the stromal component, which is a little more cellular here, little hypocellular here. We don't see any rhabdomyoblasts or any osteo. There's no heterologous component, There's no heterologous component in the stroma, and there is no anaplasia. Now, anaplasia is something which it's a histological finding. There have to be three elements to it: enlarged nuclei, which are more than 3 times the size of adjacent similar nuclei. They should be hyperchromatic and atypical mitotic figures. Now, in this slide, there is nothing. There is no feature of anaplasia. This area one could take to be blastema. These pictures have already been taken, so this fits with blastema. So this appears to be a classical triphasic Wilms tumor of favorable histology.
Okay. So I think that was what came out, and this was what was reported. So they were reasonably certain that it was a triphasic Wilms with well differentiated, no anaplasia. So the diagnosis was confirmed. This was a Wilms tumor. What would you stage the tumor as, Dr. Vora?
So staging would be post-surgery. So because it would not only involve the radiological features, but also the lymph node sampling and the post-surgical staging. So right now I would not,
Okay.
except the CT scan of the chest would tell us if it's metastatic.
No, the CT was clear. Okay. So this is what was done, and the interpretation was this is what it was, and the child underwent 8 cycles of anterior chemotherapy with 3 drugs. In June, the child had another CT. The mass had come down in size compared to what it was. There was compression of the IVC and adjacent structures, but no invasion. So at this point of time, child underwent right nephrouretrectomy. The findings at the time of surgery was it was a right renal mass pushing the colon superiorly and laterally. That was the size of the mass, 9 into 8 centimeters. There were 2 renal veins, 1 artery. The resection was complete. There was no spillage. There was no rupture. There were nodes sampled in the retrocaval and common iliac areas, and there was no other organ involvement. The surgery itself was pretty uneventful. The nephrouretrectomy was done. The adrenal was not taken out, and lymph nodes were sampled. The child sort of recovered pretty quickly after that. And once the whole specimen went to the pathologist, this was what was reported. So the nodes were all negative. The capsule was not breached, and this was the tumor extent, and this was the histological classification. Again, I think I will just ask Dr. Rekha to go through with the last bit, and then we will go on to the further.
Yeah, so I think it says very clearly the renal sinus is not involved, renal vein, there's no renal vein invasion, renal capsule, no renal capsule invasion present, and most importantly the margins, the ureteric, renal vein and renal capsule margins are uninvolved by the tumor. The histologic type is Wilms tumor favorable histology, which is similar to what we saw in the biopsy. And again, an important point, nephrogenic rests have not been identified, which means that the risk of the other kidney being involved is less likely. Post-therapy histologic classification, because anterior chemotherapy has been given. So this tumor fell into the intermediate risk, which is viable tumor is present post-chemotherapy, which comprises more than 33% of the mass, with blastemal histology, which is less than 66% of viable tumor. So blastema clearly is not more than 66%. And that would make it a high risk. But this is an intermediate risk because blastema is less. It is not a regressive type because the viable tumor is not more than, because the necrotic area is not more than 66. So this is an intermediate risk tumor. And regional nodes are negative of tumor.
So Dr. Prasad, how will you go forward now with this post-operative staging? And
so before that staging, I would like to ask, why did we choose to give 3-drug chemotherapy?
Yeah, I do not have the answer to that question, but I think it is, it was based on the size or whatever else at that time the oncologist thought that the child needed 3 drugs. So you would have used 2 based on...
We would have used 2,
okay.
Because we consider the biopsy would not upset the tumor, and considering this histopathological report, this is stage 1 intermediate histology. So we'll continue with 2-drug chemotherapy and not upstage to 3 drugs.
Dr. Laskar, would you like to add something?
No, we would obviously look at the histology to decide whether we upstage and add radiation, but this is absolutely clear. There is no, it's a stage 1, lymph nodes are negative, so no role of radiation therapy. And the same thing as Tushar said, in our tumor board, we would definitely discuss regarding 2 versus 3 drugs.
Okay. Yeah, so the child continued to have adjuvant chemo. The child had 3 drugs which continued. At the end of this, the child had an ultrasound, and the ultrasound was clear, and the child was doing well. And we are sort of now in mid-November 2017. So the child goes home, and things are fine. So the child comes back after 2 months, after completion of treatment, with symptoms what we thought essentially, at least when you heard on the phone, was basically like a subacute obstruction because of surgery. But unfortunately, the child did have a pretty large mass in the center of the abdomen and the right hypochondrium, and this was about just about a month and a half or 2 months after completion of treatment. And now there was an ultrasound that was done, and that again showed a well-defined hyperechoic mass in the right renal bed, and that was the dimensions, and that was the effect on the IVC. So obviously, this child had a pretty quick and early recurrence, within a month of completion of what we would think was actually over-treatment, based on the staging and based on the pathogen, on pathology and everything. so this is where we are, and this was the PET scan that was done at this time. So it was a pretty large mass, occupying basically the right side, more on the middle, pushing and effacing the vena cava, and a pretty large mass within a matter of a week or 2 months after completion of therapy. Yeah, so what would you think is going on?
So every case of failure should take us back and make us think of what could have gone wrong or what could have been done differently. So my first question was, how do we define the adequacy of lymph node sampling in a Wilms tumor? There are quite a few eminent surgeons here, so if somebody can guide me.
Dr. Prema, would you like to take that question? And again, it can be open to the house. Yeah.
Yes, in general, I think we are supposed to take from 5 different places. I mean, so here I'm not sure because you mentioned retrocaval and common iliac in your surgical notes, but later they said the 5 nodes sampled. So we don't know from where exactly. So these are supposed to be the minimum areas in which you should take it. So that is one thing. Also, in the CTs, I was not able to see the entire course of the IVC or the renal vein, which is always difficult with a very large tumor. So one is concerned whether some small tumor embolus may have gone away. Also, we would like to know if the artery or the vein was ligated first, because again, in a very large tumor, this can be an issue. In this particular film, I feel that although the PET scan shows like a good margin, the CT itself, the margins are not so clear-cut.
Okay.
I sometimes wonder and debate whether when we do the PSYOP policy of giving neoadjuvant chemotherapy, when you have a large tumor which is extending across the midline and going across, you've given chemotherapy and the surgeon then comes in and operates, how confident and how sure are we that actually we have gone beyond the tumor extent and taken out everything? That's one issue, and it's not only the lymph nodes, it could actually be the tumor which was left behind, and in our sampling we may not have actually sampled that.
Okay, any other? Can we have a mic, please?
Histopath staging is very, very critical in these large tumors. We follow a very different protocol of grossing, and which is a very extensive grossing wherein we take a grid of an entire tumor slice which has a maximum diameter, and that includes the entire capsule and the sinus as well. And if needed, we also take additional sections from the capsule and the sinus, because it's very, very critical in large tumors. It's easy to miss Gerota's fascia invasion or renal capsular invasion. And if we miss a stage 3 on the surgical specimen, we would deny the child radiotherapy. So just a point to get across is the histopath has to be very extensive and in a very systematic way.
Yeah, I think we will come back to that towards the later half of this presentation to address exactly that point. Would anybody else like to add anything to this? Do we think that basically it was a tumor that was probably spilt or nodes that was missed? Is that what is the general feeling? Because the pathology itself did not look that bad.
Hi, I'm Sajjan. Sorry, I missed the initial scan of at the time of surgery. But what we have seen is that even if the tumor is well circumscribed, you have gone beyond everything and excised it. There are certain areas which we need to consider, especially this subhepatic region for a right-sided lesion, where the tumor is closely abutting. After chemotherapy, there is a good amount of fibrosis, and you require meticulous dissection here. So what we do is we take the gliscens along, so we have a margin. Plus, in the mesocolon, on the mesentery on the right or the left, whenever you are reflecting the mesocolon, many a times you'll find that it is inseparable. And instead of taking the tedious job of going from right to left and lifting this much of mesocolon, sometimes you feel that you excise that mesocolon, close the defect in the mesentery. Now these two special areas, what we have done, we've just completed our SMART study. What we have done is that we have upstaged them. This is solely based on the surgeon's assessment. When there is a close proximity to these viscera, and you have to do, though you haven't opened the tumor, though the histopathology says that it is not involved, the mesocolon is not involved, the capsule is not involved, but the surgeon, and especially the diaphragm area, where you are meticulously dissecting from the diaphragm, these are the areas we term them as having adhesions to adjacent structures, not infiltration, adhesions to adjacent structure. And the initial part of our study, we found one relapse in this patient where we were so happy that we have got it from the liver and there is no opening of the capsule, but the patient relapsed. So from there on, we change. Whenever the surgeon's assessment is that you're very close, though you get a complete excision, you upstage to stage 3 disease.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So this is, I think it answers these two questions. These are the various possibilities that were. Sorry. Yes, Dr. Apaju, please.
Because of the pre-op true cut biopsy, child will benefit of the local radiation. Because as for the endometriosis, once any invasion, treat them as stage 3 rather than stage 1.
Okay. All right. All right. So I think I think these questions have been answered. So let's move on. So basically, the biopsy did show a Wilms tumor recurrence. The pathologist felt that it was exactly the same nature on biopsy as it was in the initial biopsy and the tumor. The child then received second-line chemo, 4 more cycles of chemotherapy. And the interesting thing was that within the matter of the first cycle and towards the end of the second cycle, the mass had regressed pretty significantly. So there was a good response, at least clinically. And at the end of the 4th cycle, this was what was left. So there was a sort of small tumor that was sitting here in the retrocaval para-aortic area. The child then underwent a re-exploration in April 2018, and the findings at surgery essentially were, as Dr. Sarek was mentioning, a pretty good amount of fibrosis around it, but the mass itself was pretty well defined, and it was taken out without much ado. Now, this was the biopsy that came back, and again, it said that this was a triphasic Wilms. This was the pathology finding, and Dr. Rekha, would you like to comment? It's about the same as what it was on the previous section, despite more aggressive chemo and everything else.
Yeah, but this time I think the chemotherapy-induced changes have been described in the form of extensive histiocytic infiltrate and focal necrosis. So there's the response to chemotherapy is there. Again, no features suggestive of anaplasia. Then coming to the procedure, it's an excisional biopsy. The margins are involved by tumor. So this is different from the previous report. And it is still a favorable histology Wilms tumor. And the post-therapy, the SIOP histologic classification, it remains intermediate risk, just like before. Viable tumor more than 33% with blastemal histology and less than 66%. So again, it is not blastemal predominant kind of histology.
I think now, I'd ask for inputs from Dr. Vora and Dr. Siddharth. How do we, what's the way forward now?
So this patient obviously has a recurrent disease, and we would advise radiation therapy. The question regarding radiation therapy would be whether you would advocate whole abdominal radiation therapy versus just flank radiation. And the third question would be, if you do radiation therapy, what is the dose of radiation therapy that you would do? So yes, radiation therapy, yes. Because it is recurrence and there was a biopsy that was done earlier, although there are no trials to actually differentiate the outcomes between whole abdomen versus a focal radiation in this kind of a situation, we would do 10.8 Gray in 7 fractions to the entire abdomen. We would not recommend additional boost, although the margin is positive. The recommendation regarding additional boost of 10 Gray is for patients who've got residual disease or nodules which are there and more than 3 centimeter in the maximum transverse dimension. In those patients, you will have to do a boost. For this patient, we would just do 10.8 Gray in 6 fractions whole abdominal radiation.
Dr. Bashar,
Agreed, radiation definitely. The question comes about how much more chemotherapy and what chemotherapy to continue. So in this patient, because it's always been a chemosensitive tumor, and the response to second-line chemo also has been excellent. So we would continue for further 2 or 3 cycles of ISA and then stop.
Okay, anybody from the house, would you like to? Yes, please.
Before giving more radiation, would you consider autologous transplant sometime for this patient, and if so, when?
I think I'll direct that question to Dr. Tushar. I think he's the...
We would not consider autologous transplant. As of now, the evidence for benefit of autologous transplant in a Wilms tumor is not robust enough to consider that.
Okay, so we'll continue. As I said, now we are in April 2018. So, I mean, much like what was done, the child did not receive whole body radiation, the whole abdomen radiation. The child received radiation to right flank with the boost. The child had 2 more cycles of ICE chemotherapy, which was then completed on the 6th of June this year. So that was the sort of marks and thing that they would you like to? I'm not sure those slides are very clear. Would you like to comment on it, Dr. Laskar?
No, I don't see the radiation portals, but they have definitely marked out the organs at risk, which we call the opposite kidney. And I can see at that green area, the green area is what we would call the CTV, or the clinical target volume, where you would expect disease to be. So this is what they have marked as CTV, and I would expect that they would have put a portal like this, which would cover this area, the nodal areas, the tumor bed, because the tumor bed was big here, and the flank.
Right, tumor is on the right.
Yeah, so the flank would be treated. But we would not do that. We would do a whole abdominal radiation, including the pelvis, because I would expect some amount of spillage that could be there. And by adding radiation therapy, we would not increase toxicity significantly. At the same time, you would treat all the possible clinical target volume in your radiation field. And since there is no gross residual disease, I would say there was no need for an additional boost to radiation to that. Really.
Okay. So going forward, so about a month after this, the child had a PET CT, and this PET CT was clear.
So, if I may interrupt, I have 2 questions here. We have to understand that this is a relapse case 2 months after doxorubicin-based chemotherapy being given a salvage treatment, and probably there is no further salvage. So, whatever response has been achieved needs to be consolidated to the maximum benefit as of now. Because now if this child relapses, possibly the chances of salvage further would be very less. The second question, or rather a comment, would be the need of a PET CT scan. Do we need a PET CT scan in a child of Wilms tumor just because it's a relapse? Anybody in the audience or anybody in the panel would like to comment on that? Or would just a simple sonography and an X-ray chest suffice? Or if not sonography, a CT scan of the chest abdo-pelvis?
Please.
As routine post-treatment follow-up, we do ultrasound, and if there is anything doubtful, then we do the CT.
Okay. Yeah, I think, yeah, please, forward. I think some of these things are also determined by parental anxiety. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would completely ask the same question that you asked, because this child has relapsed very shortly. You want to consolidate the maximum treatment, and if you look at first-line treatment, the child has had extra chemotherapy, including doxorubicin, which would have not otherwise used. So in other words, it is no criticism to any person here. So it's basically failure of local therapy rather than systemic therapy, which means you want to consolidate local therapy on the time of relapse. So which is why I was going to ask you the same question, why not just the flank and boost there, why for the whole abdomen in terms of radiotherapy? And in terms of should we give high-dose chemotherapy, for example, busulfan, that's a question we are currently asking in the CEOP as well. So the next relapse Wilms study is going to randomize between using high-dose chemotherapy versus consolidation with just chemotherapy in certain instances, and this would be one of those instances. And the PET CT, I would say it's the same as, yes, it satisfies the parents, but the child could relapse in 2 months' time. It doesn't tell you anything at that point, and we know the amount of radiation coming from PET CT in itself is an issue.
Yep, I think point well taken. Okay, so that's where we are at present, and the story continues, unfortunately. The child comes back 2-3 months later. As I said, this was sort of at the end of June, and this was October. 3 months later, on a screening ultrasound, the child has a right adnexal mass now, sitting there in the right pelvis, and I think Dr. Laskar's sort of statements are now deja vu. So the child had a CT, and this is a CT finding. Basically, there was a right adnexal mass. The right ovary was not seen separately. There were no nodes that were visible. The bed itself was clear. There was no other masses other than this area. The left side was normal. So how would we proceed from here? So the opening batsman can never have an easy time. Yeah.
It's an adnexal mass. I would actually want to go ahead and do a biopsy now and see whether what we are dealing with is something different from what we were dealing previously, if it's possible. And if it's proven to be a second recurrence within such a short span, after metastatic workup, if it is not extensively metastatic, there are no standard guidelines to tell me what to do next, but can we take it out? Dr. Reshkar.
My question is, how certain are we that this is an adnexal mass? Why can't this be a peritoneal drop metastasis? So are we certain about this?
This was on the CT. I mean, this is the CT. So the question is, what are you going to do next?
Okay, right. So rather than a adnexal thing, I would say this is a peritoneal. It could be anything. Peritoneal, which usually happens with relapse 1.
All right.
Tushar's suggestion that why not just take it out and get the thing sorted?
If this is the only...
If it is the only one.
Okay.
So in situations where, to Sajid it would be obviously operable. So just in case this is inoperable and we've done chemotherapy and we've done a staging workup, it's non-metastatic elsewhere, we would go ahead and do radiation therapy. And in this case, it would be more. It would be 20 gray to 24 gray radiation, only to that area.
What if it is multiple?
Multiple in that is multiple in the abdomen and this thing. So, and nowhere else.
No, 2-3 places within the abdomen.
So I'm just looking at a situation where you can actually get away by doing some kind of a local therapy alone. If you've got that kind of disease, obviously we would push to our medical oncologists and see if they can add some kind of chemotherapy, downstage it a little bit, and then back it up with surgery or radiation therapy alone. Right. Radiation therapy is definitely possible in both situations.
Okay.
Even if
so I think we'll get going. So I think here we basically the child had a laparoscopy and a laparoscopic excision because so that's what the child had. It was a fairly localized adnexal mass. The ovary was actually in the mass. The tube was in the mass. It was away from the uterus and the ureter, and the child essentially had like an excision biopsy done laparoscopically, and the findings on the biopsy were exactly the same thing as it was previously. It is still again Wilms. It is Wilms in the ovary and extension. So the tumor had focally breathed surface. The ovary also contained epithelial inclusions. The fallopian tube was not involved, and it consistent with spread from previous Wilms. So this is what it is. So the question comes the same thing: is this metastatic disease or is this peritoneal seeding? Can we say, and if we can say, does it matter?
This could be very well a hematogenous spread, but going with the story of Wilms tumor, it's usually these are peritoneal deposits, and they keep on coming. We excise that, we see one on the scan, we see two when we open up, and they keep on recurring. Unless Tushar is supporting us, I think there is a role for surgery. If not, then I don't think so. So I'm going more in favor of a peritoneal seeding. The apt term is abdominal relapse rather than a peritoneal relapse, and rather than a hematogenous spread.
So just because this is Wilms tumor and we have always been taught never say no, there are options for Wilms tumor for a third line setting also, but there will come a time, looking at the entire clinical history, 2 months DFI post doxorubicin 4 months TFI post second line salvage chemo, there will come a time when we will have to offer best supportive care. Though not now, because this is the only site of disease, it can be consolidated with radiation. We can give third line agents like even gemcitabine and docetaxel.
Okay. Any other? I think we're sort of coming to the end of the any opinions from the house. Otherwise, I'll just give a couple of slides. I think Dr. Rekha Kumar just wanted to speak about the pathology. I think points that Dr. Mukta was trying to make. Would you like to take these slides? Couple of slides you had requested.
Yeah. This is just to give the percentages. So we can just go to the next slide, which is I think what. So this basically just to say exactly what Mukta was saying is that this grossing of that specimen is very, very important. And many times that doesn't happen because people are trying to save tissue. I mean, you're going to go, you may run into, maybe 20 blocks. So, but it has to be done in a meticulous way, especially post-chemotherapy, because you're going to, whether you're going to say it's blastomemal predominant, if it's more than 66%, you're going to call it a high risk. So it changes from intermediate to high risk, and the way you treat it is going to be different. So just a small thing to pathologists that this extensive sampling must be done. You might miss anaplasia also if it's not there, apart from, not getting the amount of blastema. So those are the two important things, blastema component and anaplasia. So it must be done very meticulously.
All right. So I think we will, does anybody else have any opinions to offer? Please.
So just one last concluding sentence. So when Children's Oncology Group did centralized review, we found roughly about a quarter of patients changed their staging or their pathology or both. So I think as an oncologist at a primary center, it's very easy. You trust your surgeon, you trust your pathologist, but when you actually systematically review these centrally, it's very, and it's disturbing because the difference in, say, high risk versus intermediate risk is significant as far as the therapy goes. And a lot of what potentially takes place as far as recurrence goes may be related to margins, may be related to sampling, etc. And everybody's made these same points on the dais.
Right. So I think on that note, we will sort of stop this session. Dr. Prema Menon, Dr. Rekha, Dr. Siddharth Lester, Dr. Tusha Vora, thank you very much, and thank you all.